without further ado, I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Sobol, who is the SPAC President, and Chef Aneesa Waheed, the founder of Tara Kitchen.
Thanks so much, Katrina, and to the Junior Committee, great work. Ashley, amazing. You guys are incredible. And Heather Varney at SPAC, who, like, this is our first one, and anybody who's run a big event on Zoom knows how much coordination needs to go into it all for it to go smoothly. So thank you. Before I dive into my conversation with Chef Aneesa, I just want to share my first experience at Tara Kitchen. And when I moved up to Saratoga a little over 4.5 years ago, and most of you who've heard me talk know I was besotted from the get-go. The only thing that I felt a little disappointed on, having lived in Brooklyn for a long time, right near Atlantic Avenue, around the corner from the most amazing Mediterranean spice shops anywhere, I missed spice and I missed global food cultures in Saratoga. And a friend invited me to Tara Kitchen one night, and it was a night kind of like tonight. It was pretty cold and pretty bleak. And I walked into Tara Kitchen and I was absolutely swept away. Just the hospitality of it, the warmth, the smells. It's just a gem. And I didn't get to meet Aneesa until recently, virtually. And since having conversations with her, I'm so excited with what she's doing over and beyond the delicious food that she prepares in her kitchen. So I love her story, and I wanted to start there, just like, let's cast our minds back to Bombay, as you still call Mumbai, and let's talk about a little 6-year-old girl selling jarred pickles. Tell us about it.
Well, hello everyone. Thank you for having me. It's just a pleasure, and it's great that I'm the first one doing this, so I sort of feel like a little trailblazer here. And this whole thing came together really well. So huge round of applause to everyone at SPAC, and Heather was helping me through this event. So yeah, you know, the interesting thing is I was actually never really into cooking, but my mom was. She is a phenomenal chef. She owns her own restaurant now. She's fantastic and always cooking all the time. And when we lived in India, for her, working out of the home was not really an option. She had 5 kids. My dad had a very travel-intensive job, but she always had this spirit that she wanted to do something on her own. And it started with her pickling some different vegetables and mangoes and stuff. And then she'd put them in these bags for my sister and I, who was 3 years older than I. And we would just walk around the neighborhood and ask anybody who wanted to buy pickles. And it never occurred to me that this was anything out of the ordinary or different or silly. It was just, you know, mom said, go do this. And we did. And she was really able to build a small little cottage industry out of it. And she did, you know, some other things. So I think, you know, a part of, obviously I get a lot of my cooking style and you know, inspiration from her, but also the business and entrepreneurial inspiration from her as well. She's always been sort of the one who championed for women having their own say, their own financial independence. You know, she was very, very big on that from a very young age for me and my sister. So,
and where do you think where did she get that? I mean, that wouldn't.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's interesting is, unfortunately, my mom was orphaned at a very young age. She was only 3 when she lost both her parents, and ended up spending a lot of her years between boarding schools and various siblings and aunts and uncles. So I think it just came from the fact that from a very, very young age, as young as 3, she had to sort of fight for herself and what she needed and her rights. And then she got married to my dad also at a very young age. I believe she was only 16. And then, you know, she charts this whole life for herself at the age of 16 with someone that she barely knew. Yeah, same thing, right? I think they were set up by her brother. So I think that's where it comes from, just her wanting to have independence. And most women back in India, even, I think it's better now, but at least back when we were growing up and my mom was a housewife, it was unheard of for a woman from, you know, a well-to-do family going out and working and all of that kind of stuff. So I think she wanted to be different.
Wow. And you obviously, you feel like you absorbed, if not the, I mean, the entrepreneurial, the independence, and what else do you feel like you absorbed in that?
I think I was born this way.
Nature and nurture. And so you didn't feel like you had like, you didn't want to be a cook, but you clearly absorbed like just the whole cooking.
I think more than anything in life, what I wanted was financial independence. And that's something that, you know, I saw my mom struggle with financial independence because she was constantly tied to my dad in terms of money, right? If she wanted to buy a lipstick, if she wanted to get groceries, if she wanted to, whatever it was, she was constantly tied to this man. And it really bothered me. And I'm not entirely sure why, because obviously I have other siblings in my family too, and none of them grew up to be me. So, so I don't know. But, you know, so that was very, very strong for me, even when after moving to America at the age of 16, I started working immediately because I was able to. That was not an option in India. And then, you know, I've been working since the age of 16, 2, 3, 4 jobs, whatever it was. And I was really able to solidify my independence financially very early in my 20s. So that's very important for me. So I was always looking for that. I've had multiple failed businesses. So even when I was working and doing corporate America, and in fact, I got my first job in corporate America in Saratoga. I used to work for Quad Graphics, and I worked for them for a long time. And even when I was doing that and I felt financially strong, but the desire to be able to control my own destiny and to be able to, you know, have my own authority on how much money I could make or not make, instead of somebody telling me, here's your yearly raise. I hated that. It really, really rubbed me the wrong way to wait for someone to tell me what I was worth. You know, that's how I always felt. So from a very young age, I started to dabble in doing different businesses, trying to find what would be the right fit for me, and did many different things. I think by the time I'd opened Tara Kitchen, I'd already been trying for a good 15 years.
Wow.
And then it just clicked. Like one day it just clicked. It was food, you know, it was something, it blew me away just as much as everyone else, because I never cooked before. I didn't cook till I opened a restaurant.
That's incredible. Well, do you mind if, can we go back a little bit? You were how old when you guys moved to the States?
16.
Wow. I mean,
yeah.
What was that like? What was, I mean, culture shock, or were you
prepared?
Yeah,
I was very, very reluctant to move. And I was also very reluctant to, in fact, just fast forward like another 15 years, I was also very reluctant to become an American citizen. I was very reluctant to give up my Indian passport. So, it took me a long time to sort of grasp the idea that we had moved. And I had a very, very bad relationship with my parents for a long time because I felt I was not given the choice. You know, they just told me this is what's happening and we had to go. I was under 18, I couldn't make a choice. And so it was very difficult. It was very difficult. We came in, we flew into a snowstorm, landed at the wrong airport. I mean, the whole thing was a disaster from day one. So it took a long time to adjust. But, you know, I might feel a certain way about a situation, but logically I might act differently, if that makes sense. So even though I was upset and I was angry, and at 16, you know, leaving my friends behind and my culture, and I think in one of our conversations, I told you one of my biggest dreams was to be an actress, and I really wanted to join, you know, the film industry and all those kind of things, and which my parents never ever thought was ever an idea.
Well, I mean, you did reference art and music, and you know, and your background. I mean, since we're talking about creating during COVID, and we'll get to that. Creativity is obviously a big part of your way of thinking. Can you just talk about like those different elements and how
Yeah, you know, again, it's just, it was a natural inclination for me from a very young age, whether it was I sewed my own clothes, or whether it was putting outfits together, or makeup was a big thing for me, and acting was always a big thing. So always participating in events in school. I took dance lessons. I tried the violin, and my teacher was like, not for you, so I dropped that. He was like, please, I'll pay for another class, go somewhere else. You know, so yeah, singing was another big one. I used to like, I forced my parents to get me singing lessons, and finally they relented. And I used to ride a little red bike to my teacher's house. I must have been around 10. And then one day I got into a little accident. So then they cut that off. Yeah, so I mean, I've always loved the arts, whether it was painting, drawing. You know, I won a bunch of competitions, like doing art stuff in school, those kind of things. So it's just something that I've always loved.
Yeah. Well, you also, I mean, you clearly have sort of an artist's soul, you know, the creativity, also a little bit of the bucking conformity, the not wanting to start the day, you know, start the week on the Monday morning, you know, like I totally get that. You know, so there's that, there's a creativity, there's the nonconformity, but there's also just like in your personal story, I mean, you just alluded to it, that you'd started things and had failures along the way, but your persistence is really extraordinary. I mean, just you know, maybe you want to elaborate on that a little bit. Like, you really just like went at it, and when something didn't work, you moved on and you started something else. You don't seem to let things really knot you. You're a person of determination, I think.
Yeah, and you know, I have to give my father credit for that. Because my father, I talk a lot about my mom, but my dad comes from such adversity. Is just, you know, to know his life story and to know where he came from, and how he did it. You know, he came from a family that they had no power in their house. He would sit on the sidewalk in the middle of the night to read underneath the lights, the street lights, so he could get his homework done, so he could go to school. And then from that life, he was able to then become a journalist. And then from being a journalist, he then became a very, very famous ad person in India, had a very illustrious career in advertising in India, and eventually became a professor. And he still, you know, does some teaching around here as well. So I look at that, and, you know, I look at his life story, and living in India, you know, it's very common to see people sort of bring themselves up by their bootstraps, or much more difficult situations than I have ever been in. And that's my inspiration. You know, I look at that and I say, I've been given, although I was a reluctant entry into America, this was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. You know, to be able to reach the heights of my career, reach the heights of my dreams in terms of what I want to do and what I'm capable of doing. It's really not possible in any other part of the world. And we travel a lot, and we talk to people all over the world, and, you know, that's, you know, the American dream is so true, right? That's why it's called the American dream. So yeah, I you know, it's my parents. I get it from them. It's from my environment, and looking at people who have been through much worse situations and are able to pull through it. So what's the point of crying about spilt milk, right? That's it. It's done. So
well, I love, like, in one interview somewhere I read, you know, you had a line that was like, do what needs to be done, mind over matter, you know.
That's it.
That's kind of, you know, there. So I want to, so we, you know, family life, early life, let's talk about this, food and love. Pakistan, Morocco, India, like where all that stuff comes together in your life.
Yeah. So I was living in New York City, working in publishing, and I was still struggling to try and start a business, do something in the city, and I'd done many different things, and it wasn't really clicking. So I was sort of in a bad space one year, and a couple of my girlfriends said, hey, let's just go on vacation. Let's just get out of town and go see what happens. So we just looked at the world map and we looked at all the countries that the three of us had not been together. We wanted to go someplace that we could experience together. And that turned out to be Morocco. Mm-hmm. So we had no other rhyme or reason to pick Morocco except to say that none of us had been there. And it was very difficult to find a country that none of us had been to. Wow. So we ended up in Morocco, and lots of stuff happened, but that's where I ended up meeting Muntasem, who's my now husband. And he was there working because his family had a business, and he had come to Morocco from Pakistan. And it was just one of those really, really kismet-like meetings, and we were married within 3 months.
Wow.
So I spent about 5 days in Morocco during our vacation, kind of hanging out and, eating kebabs on the street and drinking orange juice, and came back to the US, and we sort of decided over the phone that we were going to get married. If you're going to do it, just do it.
That's great. Oh my God.
And then the next time we saw him was at, when he came to pick me up for the wedding. And, this is pre-Skype and pre-FaceTime. And my biggest thought was, I was like, gosh, I hope I remember what he looks like. I mean, I knew, but then I was still like, what if I don't?
Oh, that is great. And so where did you get married? Did you go back to Morocco to marry?
Yeah. So we could, because he was from Pakistan, mm-hmm. and we had family coming from literally all over the world, and we were trying to do this within, the 3 months. We met in the end of December, and we were married March 31st. So wow. Literally, and January we spent just thinking about it. So February was really the month we had to plan. And we had family coming from all over the world, and nobody could get visas to the US.
Wow.
So the best place for us, including him. So the best place for us to get married was Morocco. And then it turned out, it was very challenging for us to get married in Morocco as well, because in Morocco, the only people who can get married are a citizen of Morocco and then a foreigner. Mm-hmm. You can't be two foreigners getting married in Morocco. That's sort of the rule of the kingdom, which we didn't know. Mm-hmm. So we had to negotiate a lot of stuff in order to get married there, but then we eventually did.
Wow, that's an amazing story. And then did you move straight to the States together, or did you have like?
No, so we got married, and then I flew back a couple weeks later, and then we started his immigration process, and that took a year. So what I was doing during the course of, and that's sort of really how my whole Moroccan love affair started, because every month I worked for 3 weeks in the city. I worked at a magazine. So we did the cycle where I would put the magazine to bed, and then we had a week off in terms of like real work for production. And I would take that week and I would go to Morocco. So I did that for a whole year. And during that week in Morocco, I'd hang out, cook food. We had a cook in the house, and she was sort of teaching me stuff how to do, and I was learning more out of curiosity and boredom than anything else. And that's really how I learned to cook Moroccan food, and that's how I discovered how to cook in a tagine and all the things that you could do. And then I brought a tagine back home, and I was like, this is so perfect for cooking for one person. Yeah. And that's really how it all started.
That's incredible. Did ever in your wildest dream while you were doing that, you thought, God, I'd love to do, like, what about a Moroccan restaurant? Did that ever occur to you?
Never.
Out of necessity. You're learning to cook because you're in Morocco.
And even cooking the whole Moroccan thing was purely by accident, because eventually he did move. I quit my job in the city and we moved upstate, and we were, we had a boutique and we were doing that. And a couple ladies walked into the store and they said, I was selling tagines, and they said, what is this? And I said, oh, this is a tagine. And I started explaining to them, and they looked at me and they said, well, do you know how to cook Moroccan food? And I said, yeah, I do this at home. And they said, well, can you do it in my house for a private party? Wow. And I said, of course. And then, we talked about what they wanted to do, and I created a menu, and I sort of went to their house and did this private party for about, I think it was like 12, 15 people. Mm-hmm. and it purely by accident. And then, started cooking Moroccan food.
That's crazy.
Yes.
That's really crazy. And so do you also, look, I know in India, there's like 5 gazillion different regional, like you can't, like Indian food isn't, it's like, and is the same true in Pakistan? Was there overlap between what you and your husband, what do you cook at home, for instance? Like, are you?
That's a really good question. But I like to make fun of Muntasim, because there's like 5 things he likes to eat, and those are like the 5 things he eats, right? So I've not necessarily found the vastness of different cooking styles and ingredients in Pakistani food that we have in India. They sort of mirror a lot of the regional food that northern India does. But in India, because it's so huge, we have the South, where the food is very different. It has lots of roots in Indonesia and in South Africa and Ethiopia. So there's a lot of that stuff in the south of India. And then you have the far east of India, which is heavily influenced by Far East Asia, that kind of stuff. So there's definitely a lot more diversity in cooking styles and ingredients. But there's also a lot of similarities in the northern style of Indian cooking in Pakistan as well. So, but it's still different. Like when he cooks and I cook, you will be able to tell that the food is different. So
do you cook a lot of at home what you each grew up with? Or
my kids are actually very, very adventurous. They live with me. They're forced to be. So we do a lot of adventurous cooking. We do a lot of stuff that I grew up with, a lot of stuff he did. We look at recipes, and they love to experiment. So we could be doing Chinese, we could be doing Cuban, we could be doing Indian, lots of different things.
That sounds amazing. I mean, that sounds so amazing, like to be, and you're just in your one household to be sharing so many different global cuisines and tastes and flavors and spices,
Yeah, and I'm really, really blessed that my kids love it too, because it's great to do it with them, and then I don't have to do the kids meal and the adults meal kind of thing. And they eat a lot at the restaurant. They're at the restaurant a lot as well.
Well, so I want to talk about spice for a minute, because I love spices and I love trying new things and everything. And like I said, when I came to Saratoga, the cooking was very good, but there was not, it missed spice, it missed heat, and so I know you have your own line of spices and sauces and everything. What are your favorite spices? What do you love cooking with? Like what really excites you? What kind of smells and flavors?
Yeah, what's interesting is I'm not ever after spice as much as I'm after flavor. So for me, when I'm thinking about, if I'm eating out, then I'm thinking about what is something different that I can try. So, I'm always looking for the most obscure restaurant in any city, or obscure style of cooking, or, if there's a Tibetan restaurant, I'm going to be there, right? Like, so that's how I like to eat if I'm outside. But if I'm cooking for the family, and if I'm creating the menu or designing new recipes for the restaurant, I am more thinking backwards of a flavor profile than anything else. And then I figure out, how do I get that flavor using ingredients available to me? And sometimes, it could be a hard to find spice, and sometimes it could be something as simple as ketchup, right?
Wow.
So so I don't necessarily distinguish between, a sought after spice, or expensive spice or a cheap spice. I'm really, really flavor driven, and I'm also very much visually driven. So many times when I'm creating a recipe, I see the picture first. I see the textures, I see the colors, I see how things are working on a plate before even the flavors. And then I think about the flavors, and then the last thing is, how do I achieve it? So it's all sort of, it comes together in a different way in my head. But there's some.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, there are definitely some staple spices that I'm using all the time, whether it's Indian or Moroccan cuisine, like cumin and coriander and fenugreek, and the turmeric, and those kind of, cinnamon is a big one, and cloves and garam masala. So there are definitely some standards that I hang on to, and then kind of develop from there.
Yeah, but I love your point about, again, like in Western, that's a terrible phrase, but you know, like
Yeah.
cooking that, you know, sort of is known as American cooking, like we're thinking about how something tastes and possibly about the texture, but we're not thinking about the color, you know, and just the sheer attractiveness, like the thing that before the food has even hit your taste buds, you know, like the retina, like, you know, seeing colors that are so evocative of the tastes that are to come. Like that's not something that's really woven into our cooking traditionally in North America. And that's one of the things I, you know, love about like Indian food, Chinese food, like the many tastes, you know, of combining bitter and pungent and salty and sweet and sour, you know, making sure all of those things coexist is so exciting when you're cooking. So you have such an intuitive, you know, take on all of these things. I mean, you didn't grow up cooking. You didn't see yourself as a chef. Is all of this self-study? Do you read recipes, or do you just do your thing and learn from your mistakes and your discoveries? Or,
you know, I mean, even though I never thought of myself as someone who was going to end up cooking for a living, I've always been fascinated and loved food. And I also get that from my father, because my dad would literally announce the menu for the day before he left for work, right? Because and in India, like for most men working in the office, a lunch is actually sent to them, right? They get a hot lunch at work. You don't carry something. Or even in school, when I was in school, they would, you know, a helper from the house would come with the tiffin for me for lunch because I insisted on eating hot food. So for him, it was like, even before he had breakfast, it was like, this is what I'm having for breakfast. This is my lunch. This is my dinner. He would announce it. He'd prep his menu. So I was like, okay. So that's how I kind of grew up. He's very, very much into food, and also very much into trying and exploring and all those kind of things. So, you know, it's something that it's just been a part of my life for a long, long time.
Oh, that's really beautiful. I've studied Ayurveda for a long time and done a lot of Ayurvedic cooking, and you know, also the notion that these, you know, the colors and the tastes also have energetic properties that influence your health and your body and your balance and everything. And again, and that's not something, you know, the sort of Western or American way of looking at food. We don't really look at food as something that is also healing. It's kind of fundamental to your health, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, we are thought that food is healing from a very, very, very early age in India. You know, it's why we use certain spices. Like turmeric is almost mandatory use in India. In fact, all restaurants in India by law have to use turmeric in their food because it prevents against cancer and has antiseptic value. You know, and even like when we were growing up, you use certain spices and you use certain ingredients and you marry certain ingredients together because they have some value in what they're going to do inside your body. So that, yeah, absolutely, you know, that's something that we're taught from a very early age.
I mean, to me, that's such an important thing that, like, if only that could be incorporated into the way we think of food in our culture. Yeah, just to respect food, you know, and not to respond to food like as going after like satisfying a craving, but really being very intentional, you know, about food.
Yeah, I mean, talking about that, one of the most perplexing things to me when we first moved to the US was when people would, well, we watched it on TV mostly, but when people would throw pies into people's face, like, we don't get it.
I don't either.
Why are you throwing perfectly good food that can be consumed in someone's face unless he's gonna eat it all? Yeah, that was like, you know, the whole relationship between food and how you interact with it and how you respect it and how you consume it is I found it to be very different culturally from what I was used to growing up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that, you know, respecting dinner time. I mean, I think in the time of COVID that, you know, we're all missing communal meals with extended family and friends and everything. And I'm so hopeful that that's going to take us back to a respect and an appreciation for food is that thing that brings us together. It gives us a place to gather and share, share and treat it with more respect and
love.
sort of, communal enjoyment, I mean, the sort of get your food and go watch television with your spouse while you're eting thing is, that's gotta go. Yeah, that should be outlawed. But okay, so I just said the C word. Let's talk about COVID for a moment, because another quote that I loved of yours is, I don't believe in perfect timing.
Yeah.
And, you started getting going around 2008, which was another very difficult time. And now we're in COVID, and I've just been so impressed with your intrepid attitude, again, those attitudes and characteristics of creativity and determination. So like, just talk to us about what you've been doing and how you've been thinking about life and cooking and business.
I mean, I have to say that, I've been through many challenging times and many difficult times. But I like to say that when you open a new restaurant with an 8-month-old toddler and you find out you're 3 months pregnant and then you still have to do it, everything else is a cakewalk.
Oh my God.
So
we have a lot of mothers with children on this call tonight. So
yes, when Schenectady was scheduled to open, we had a daughter, and then the day I got the keys to the building was the day I found out I was pregnant with my second one. And my husband and I looked at each other, and to us it wasn't even a question. It wasn't a question of, are we postponing, are we not doing? It was just, this is life and you move on, right? And so I think that was very challenging. But I have to say that when COVID first hit and we were sort of watching the slow train wreck last February, right? Like that's when it started to come into our consciousness here in America. And March 15th, when the governor finally announced that dine-in was shut down, it was paralyzing. It was fear, and it was, as a restaurateur for almost 8-9 years at that point, your entire life's mission is to get people into your restaurant, right? And then you're told. And I didn't understand what even that meant. I mean, like, does that mean that we just shut down? Does that mean we do takeout? What does that even mean? So it was very, very scary. It was challenging. But again, my attitude was, it is what it is. And you can't fight something and expect a different outcome to a problem that there isn't a solution to, right? So I wasn't going to sit there and think about how we could reopen dine-in, because that was out of my control. But I had to think about, how do we stay alive and relevant, and how do we sort of make this work? And so that was a Sunday. I remember it was a Sunday we found out. So Monday is our day off, and basically took Monday to figure out how do we continue. And we had lots of meetings with the crew and my husband, and we were all thinking, do we go in? Do we start to do? Because at that point nobody knew. Like, it was literally thinking, you're going into a war zone. You don't know if you're gonna die because you got COVID at the restaurant, or you don't know if you're gonna give it to somebody. I mean, it was definitely the single most challenging time, thus far. But what I said to everyone was, let's listen to what they're saying. What is the CDC saying? What is the governor saying? And let's follow those protocols, and let's stick by them, and then see what happens. And, instead of preemptively closing and shutting down and then waiting for things to change, we just followed all the guidelines. And, here we are a year later, and we really figured out how to do we'd never been a takeout business.
Wow.
My restaurant was really not known for takeout. We're definitely a more of a sit down experience, come hang out with us kind of place. So I would say pre-COVID, my takeout business was probably about 5%. And then now we had to pivot to 100% takeout business. And that was very challenging because we didn't know how to do it. Wow. I don't think a lot of people, I didn't know, and a lot of people don't understand why takeout is so different than dine-in.
Can you just explain? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I can do it really quickly too. So when you dine in and you come into the restaurant, from the moment you come in, you have multiple different areas of the restaurants that are servicing you. So be it the bar, be it the waitress, be it the busboy, and you know, the kitchen's cooking your food, a host is maybe talking to you. So there's lots of interaction that's happening to service you as a customer when you're in the building. But when you're a takeout customer, everything that you need needs to come from the kitchen. Mm. So the kitchen is now responsible for every part of the food, every dessert, every appetizer, all of that. So the amount of work that the kitchen is doing and the time that they need to do it in gets shortened. Because if you come into the restaurant, you're expecting to be there for an hour, hour and a half, maybe. But when you order dinner, you expect it to be ready in 30 minutes. So you could have ordered food for 8 people with 4 appetizers and 8 entrees and 4 desserts or 3 kinds of drinks. But guess what? Now we have to get it all together in that 30 minutes. Wow. We don't have the luxury of that hour and a half to service you. And then every individual component has to be packed. Right. So in a restaurant, if we miss something on your table and you're like, hey, you forgot my blah, 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 we could just run it to you, right? But if for a takeout order, we have to be so much more careful in how we're packaging and checking, and we still screw it up. So, not to say we don't, but, there's just a lot more effort and time that goes into actually packing an order than it does dine in.
I mean, I so appreciate you explaining that, because like we've all, as people who go for takeout,
yeah,
and you don't know what's going, it's like,
yeah. Yeah, that's actually been so challenging, because the one thing we found out early on during when COVID first hit and the shutdown happened, everybody eats at 5:30, and we were like, like, is this really true? Like, oh my God. And I was talking to some of my other friends in the industry. I'm like, why is it that everybody wants meanwhile, when you have a dine-in restaurant, you're busy, the whole night. Yeah. But 5:30, everybody picks up their food and it's like crickets. And I'm like, so we had to really figure out the timing too. And then I realized that if you're dining in your home with your family and your kids, you are in fact eating at 5:30 or 6, and that is your dine-in time. But if you're out and at a restaurant, you're a little bit more fluid with when you're going to be eating. So that was another huge learning curve for us, and we had to back out all of our cooking and prep time for that 5:30 mark, because the first few days we sort of fell flat. We didn't understand why we were getting these hundreds of tickets all for 5:30, because you at home don't know that there are 100 other guys.
Oh my God. That's so funny, because like my husband and I, like, first of all, in non-COVID times, we're hardly ever here, and he's on the road and I'm working. And so we so rarely have a chance to cook at home, but we've been cooking at home now for a year. And we have migrated now to, like, we'll frequently make dinner at 5 or 5:30. I'm like, what in the world is going on? I'm like, in what universe did we ever eat at 5 or 5:30?
Yes. So I learned that, this whole COVID year has been like a mini crash express MBA for me. I've learned so much about people. Oh my God. I've learned so much about my own business. I've learned so much about myself as a person, more than I ever, knew about myself. And I mean, although the first couple of months were so challenging, but once we sort of figured it out, and I have a fantastic, absolutely diehard, loyal team who's stuck with me and stayed with me and, just powered through the whole year with me. It just feels like coming out of it, like December 31st felt like such a huge victory, not that we're out of COVID yet, but it just felt like the weight of 2020 was lifted,
No, I'm happy to hear that. I mean, I think that, clearly a lot of people have suffered a lot of devastation. And so in no way to minimize, how COVID has hit so many people. But at the same time, I think we have all learned so much. Yeah. We've had time to contemplate, time to be self-reflective. I know at SPAC, like we learned to wake up every morning not having a clue what the day would bring or what the month would bring or the year, and you just learn to operate with humility and uncertainty, and just kind of, as you say, just, you know, do what needs to be done, mind over matter, you know? So
I think that's the victory. You have to sort of put everything, you know, in your mind in a positive perspective.
Yeah.
And you know, this is something else I said to the crew way back when too. I said, failure is not an option. I have not worked so hard through, you know, all the difficulties, through everything that we have been through the past 10 years, to have, you know, it all go away. And I said, you know, we're going to fight as hard as we possibly can. And there were days when I felt my eyelashes hurting, but you know, it was all worth it because we were able to, we were really able to come out of it.
Well, I think it's comes with that territory of when you do something that is purpose driven, you know, it carries you through. You know, we're gonna in about 2 minutes, we're gonna move into a question and answer. But I wanted to also mention something that you are doing, your incubator, because that's incredible work. I mean, that you're kind of paying it forward, and tell us what you're doing with the Tara.
Yeah, you know, I wanted to do something where I could help another person in the community, especially a minority entrepreneur, in a way that they could, because I can understand their struggle. You know, I came up through that struggle. You know, I came up through not having money and having tons and tons of doors slammed in your face and banks not loaning you or not knowing how to do a business plan or any of those things. But I've also been that person who's always asked questions and gone out and found answers and stuff, but it's not always easy for people.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of times people might not necessarily have the confidence or feel that they are, you know, are asking the right questions. So that's it. So the Tara Incubator is something that in some way I was thinking about for a long time. And I've also, you know, in many ways helped people along the way, like with any knowledge that I had, you know, always sharing it, or if someone came to me, helping them through it. But I finally decided to formalize it last summer, in the wake of everything that happened, you know, with the Black Lives Matter movement, and, you know, wanting to really be part of the community in a way that I felt like I was helping. Yeah. You know, it's not even so much about giving back or paying it forward. It's more just being part of the community and helping share, you know, my knowledge and how I've done it. And I think people look at me now and might see this really fantastic life, or might see what they seem as a fantastic life and forget all the struggles of the past 20 years. And, you know, it's just my way of sort of talking to them and letting them know that I also started right where they are right now. And this is how I did it. So I think it's been great.
I think that's really wonderful. I mean, amidst everything you're doing and all the challenges, to be thinking about the community and to be thinking about people who are having a hard go with it, you know, I really commend you. We're at 7:45, and so we're gonna turn it back over to Katrina for questions. Aneesa, this has been so, I love talking to you. I could talk to you all night long. You are so amazing. Your food is so amazing. But let's go to questions now, and then we'll wrap it up around 8.
Yeah, so can everybody hear me okay? Perfect. So thank you so much, Aneesa. That was so inspiring to hear about your story. So we're actually getting a lot of questions starting to come in. This is actually from our former past president for Junior Committee, is Caitlin. And she wants to know what's the best thing that has come out of COVID for you and your business.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the best thing that's happened is I've become a better chef. I've actually become a much, I mean, I don't, you know, presume to know that I know everything about cooking and food and that stuff, but I was quite happy because I went into this bubble of I just need to cook and I just need to sort of survive and make this business go. And one of the things we ended up doing last year was because travel was not a thing, we started traveling through food. And I started doing these sort of global inspired foods that I was craving, and I was listening to people crave and talk about, oh my God, I can't go here because I cannot get this or that. And so I started to learn how to cook a lot of more foods than I'd ever cooked before. And it actually made me a much better cook than I was ever before.
That's awesome. I know, like for me and my husband, that's one of the big things that we've actually enjoyed doing is cooking throughout this, because we've always gone out to eat, and it's interesting to explore all these new cultures. So, so we actually have another question here. What's your favorite dish to eat from Tara Kitchen, and also what's your comfort food dish?
Well, I don't know if I have a favorite dish at Tara Kitchen. That's like asking me to pick which my favorite kid is. I might or might not have one. Well, there's absolutely nothing on the menu that I don't love. So I never put anything on the menu just because, right? So everything that goes on the menu is what I have tasted and tested and labored over and, forced people to eat the bad versions of it, especially my husband. So for the most part, I love everything on the menu. But if I was really hard pressed, I would say the chicken with preserved lemons and green olives, or the lamb meatballs with the poached eggs, the classic tagines. And what is my comfort food? So my comfort food is a hot fudge sundae from Stewart's. And I actually, fun fact, the girl at Stewart's knew I was pregnant before even I did, because I was eating one every day. And she finally said, you might want to check this out. And I was like, wait, I never thought I could be pregnant. This was before I had my first daughter. So I've eaten the exact same sundae for almost 15 years now. It's a hot fudge sundae from chocolate sundae from Stewart's.
You can't go wrong with Stewart's ice cream.
No.
Okay, so we got another question here. What is one of your favorite takeout spots other than your restaurant?
Ooh. Yeah. That's a good one.
Or
okay.
maybe we say the type of food or something.
Yeah, I love going to La Mexicana for their tacos. They're a little bodega in Schenectady. We love going to A La Shanghai, which is a Chinese restaurant in Latham. I love Celadon Thai, which is a Thai restaurant. We love sushi. So I would say, those are good to-goes for us. Hong Kong Bakery on Wolf Road, they do some dim sum that, my kids and I love. So we'll do that frequently.
Right, I'm just taking a look here. So what was it like to open a new location mid-COVID?
Yeah, that's a great question. That was, Guilderland was actually scheduled to open in March, or we had been planning to open it in March, but it was getting delayed due to some other reasons. And right when COVID happened, I had to make a choice. Do I continue, or do I just sort of, kill the project and revisit it after COVID? And mind you, back in March of 2020, none of us knew, is this going to be a 3-week thing, a 3-year thing, a 3-month thing? So, my attitude was, we've started it and we're going to figure out a way. It might not be the way that we had planned on doing it, but there's got to be a way to do it. And, it was scary. It was all of those things. I think, I'm not immune to not being scared. I probably operate from the position of fear more than anything else. Fear of not being successful being one of them. So, we just moved forward with it, and we were very, very, very careful in how we plan, and financially planning and all of those kind of things. And I have really fantastic team, and I have a really fantastic CFO who works in our company and who's always sort of, I'm sort of the creative and business, the ideas and all that stuff. And then Larry knows how to sort of bring it back to earth.
Okay, so this is, you talked about, during COVID, you and your family really did a lot of more experiences at home. And so will you be incorporating any of those new global recipes that you've kind of developed with your family during this time into your restaurants?
Yeah, we did. We absolutely did. So, I mean, not only were we doing the global specials in the restaurant, and we're continuing to do them, and I'm continuing to explore and find new ideas, but we've now incorporated all of that stuff into the menu. So when Guilderland opened, one of the things I did was actually have, we launched with a new menu. So that menu is more representative of what I was doing in the kitchen and with my cooking style in the year of 2020 than ever before. So that menu will now trickle down into Schenectady and also Troy. But it's a fantastic menu. We have shepherd's pie on it, and we have many different kinds of things on it that you wouldn't normally think that we would be doing, and it's been lots of fun to do it.
Speaking of locations, there is a question that has come through. Is there any chance of possibly a Saratoga location in the future?
Yes. We were just in Saratoga last Monday scouting. So yes, we always knew that we were going to do Saratoga, but it was a timing thing for us in terms of all my businesses are within a 15-mile radius of my house. So when I'm scouting a location, I'm looking at travel distance because I have 2 small children, and I want to make sure that I can be home and all those kind of things. So Saratoga, the only reason we never did Saratoga was because of the distance from where I live. That's a good 45 minute drive for me. But now as the kids are getting older and are also actually helping in the business and working and that kind of stuff, it's become more of a reality to think that I could be gone from the home for, maybe 5-6 hours and it will be fine. So absolutely, we're in the market right now. We're actively looking at real estate and options. And but I think when we do Saratoga, we have a new, not necessarily a fully brand new concept, but we have a concept we're bringing to Saratoga, which is going to, it's going to be pretty mind blowing.
That's exciting. I think based on the amount of meals that went to the Hall of Springs tonight, I think you've got a lot of exciting customers. So the next question here is, are you doing any online cooking seminars coming up here?
Yeah, I mean, that was a big question last year too, because one of the things I did stop doing was my cooking classes. We used to do about 4 or 5 different classes in the restaurant each month, and we obviously stopped that. And I did not really look into doing the online seminars because last year the focus was so much about preserving and protecting the restaurants and making sure that the buildings and operations were actually operating at full functionality, those kind of things. So it's definitely something that we're looking into and thinking about and how to sort of move forward with. So who knows?
So I actually have my own question for you. So it didn't get brought up earlier, but Aneesa has done some stuff on the Food Network.
Oh.
How do you prepare to appear on national television?
What's interesting is I've sort of never really gone after or wanted to be on these competition shows. Even though I am highly competitive, I only like to do things when I know I'm going to win. So so when my victory is guaranteed, I'll enter the match. But I thought to myself, this is so fun and interesting that I'm being invited. It's sort of like being asked to the prom, right? And it's all the shows have been really fun to do and make connections. But I have to say, it's very difficult to even think about prepping for that kind of stuff. I've done both. I've done like extreme amount of prepping to like go into a competition show. I've done the opposite. And but the thing is, when you get on set and when the cameras are rolling and there's lights and there's all this direction and all that stuff, you never know what's going to happen. But the fun part is actually cooking.
That's awesome. So, I got some questions here for Elizabeth too, kind of with what's next on the plate, pun intended, for SPAC's culinary adventures.
Oh, well, lots. You saw us launch CulinaryArts at SPAC last fall. And we did events as long as we could until things just got not safe for gathering, but we will start gearing up again as soon as we can. CulinaryArts is going to be even more, a richer, more enmeshed part of our programming, as you'll see going forward. And I'm gonna toss a challenge to Aneesa, which is I have a friend who is an Ayurvedic practitioner and chef, but he lives in Michigan. And I have this crazy idea about, I want him to do an Ayurvedic cooking session. If you would take on the challenge of actually cooking the dishes and we could make the Ayurvedic dishes available.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Okay, so we just came up with the next project.
Well, that was what I was going to say. Like, is SPAC going to team up with Tower Kitchen again?
I want to do whatever we can with Aneesa. Like, we will definitely do more. And I have an inkling of what she's thinking about for Saratoga, and I think it's awesome. I'm not spilling any beans right now, so. Yeah, we'll definitely do more, and we'll be obviously doing more of these virtual creating during COVID series, and but lots more in the food space, because that's where our hearts are, and we can't sit in the amphitheater and listen to music. We can join around tables, socially distanced, and share great food together. So, Aneesa, I can't thank you enough for being part of this tonight. You are so awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, you're very inspiring.
Oh, thank you guys.
So I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us tonight. We're very excited about this series. So this is just the first part of a 4-part series that we do have planned. So be on the lookout for further emails to come regarding any future events that we're planning to have. It's going to be the 3rd Tuesday of March, I believe. And then we also, I think I mentioned that before, but Junior Committee is planning to match all donations that we get through this event series up to $1,000. And if anybody on the line is not a member of Junior Committee and would like to join, please reach out to us at spacjuniorcommittee@spac.org. We have our own email address now, so we're all excited about that. So I just want to thank everybody, and if there's anybody in Junior Committee, just hold on the line and we're going to go to a breakout room. Thank you again, Elizabeth and Aneesa.
Thank
you so much, guys. Thank you for having me.